Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something that, well, it touches every single human life: pain. We've got a really fascinating set of sources today, mostly centered around Melanie Thernstrom's book, The Pain Chronicles. It covers, gosh, cures, myths, diaries, brain scans, the whole science of suffering. Our mission really is to unpack how we've understood pain throughout history. From ancient myths right up to modern neuroscience. And what does that mean for how we experience it, how we treat it today? We'll explore some surprising facts, dive into personal stories, and actually reveal how our beliefs can literally shape our physical reality.
Yeah, what's truly striking here, I think, is just how deep these perceptions of pain go. Often rooted in ideas from millennia ago, right? Even when science tells us something different, we'll see how shifting that understanding can sometimes transform pain from this thing that feels like an unmanageable curse into, well, hopefully a treatable condition, something we can grasp.
Okay, so let's cast our minds back. Let's start unwrapping this history. How was pain understood before science really, peeled back the layers for thousands of years? Think about consumption, that wasting disease, glittering eyes, disappearing flesh. It was seen as a spiritual thing, a struggle within. But then, boom, 1882, this German physician identifies Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and suddenly, like 4,000 years of myth just evaporate. Consumption becomes tuberculosis, a specific disease, not some state of being.
Right. And Susan Sontag points this out. It's a classic example, isn't it?
Mhm.
How we understand diseases through metaphors until we figure out the actual pathology. And the philosopher Michel Foucault, he observed that modern medicine really kicked off when doctors stopped asking, what is the matter with you? Which invites this whole complex personal story, right?
Right.
And instead they started asking, where does it hurt? Just focusing purely on the biology of the location.
Yeah, just the spot. And this metaphorical lens, it wasn't just for diseases like consumption. Pain itself was tangled up with all this spiritual and moral meaning. It was often seen as like a curse. Think Adam condemned to toil, or Eve's pain in childbirth, or maybe a way to redemption, or even, get this, a tool in legal trials. Trial by ordeal. Your guilt was determined by whether God protected you from pain, like holding a hot iron or walking on coals.
Seriously, if God didn't step in, didn't protect you, well, you were guilty. Exactly. That belief in pain's spiritual side made it a critical instrument. Even when surgical anesthesia came along mid-19th century, ether gas, it was incredibly controversial. You had important people like the president of the American Dental Association saying things like, I am against these satanic agencies which prevent men from going through what God intended them to go through.
Wow, satanic agencies.
Yeah. And using it during childbirth, especially debated, because it seemed to bypass a divine command. It's also worth remembering some surgeons kept operating without it, particularly in experimental surgeries on enslaved women. The prevailing prejudice was, well, that they didn't feel pain the same way. Shows how deep these beliefs ran.
And this old way of thinking, it's not totally gone, is it? It's like a legacy we've inherited. What's interesting is how the author, Melanie Thernstrom, she saw her own journey with chronic pain kind of mirroring this history. At first, she saw her pain as a personal affliction, failure, or curse. Very old school thinking, right? But through her research, that shifted. It became a manageable medical problem. Still awful, but different, knowable. She even kept this pain diary, but she noticed it became a place for embroidering my pain with pernicious meanings, adding those old layers back on.
That really makes you think, though. If we understand pain now as a biological disease, why do these metaphors still stick around so powerfully? As Thernstrom found, a biological disease becomes a personal illness. It changes the person. It gets loaded with all these personal, cultural, historical meanings. So, yeah, maybe the modern doctor asks, where does it hurt? But the patient, they're still quietly asking themselves, what is the matter with me? That deeper question.
Right. So, okay, that's the history, the metaphors. But what does modern science actually tell us about pain itself? You might be wondering, like, what is the modern understanding?
Well, putting it simply, pain is normally protective. We're talking acute pain here. It's your body's alarm system, warning you about tissue damage, making you rest, and then it should disappear when you heal. But, and this is the crucial bit, when pain sticks around long after it's served its purpose, that's when it morphs into chronic pain. And that is a pathology in itself. It's that fraction of pain that nature cannot heal, as the book says. Doesn't resolve, often gets worse. It can start small, really trivially, but then it takes on a life of its own.
Okay, so this is where the biology gets really, really interesting. It starts with these things called nociceptors. They're basically specialized danger sensors in your body. They're attached to two types of nerve fibers, A delta and C fibers. The A delta fibers, they give you that fast, sharp ouch, hot stove kind of warning. Super localized. It's so fast it can trigger a reflex before your brain even fully registers it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the C fibers. They get activated after the damage. They produce that slow, persistent, kind of diffuse ache or burn.
Right. And understanding these two pathways is key. Pain isn't just one thing. And the evolutionary angle here is pretty amazing, too. Nature gives even simple creatures like worms and leeches those basic nociceptors and reflexes, but they don't have the thinking parts of the brain to actually feel pain in the way we do or remember dangers. A deer, though, it has a cortex. It generates pain. That's vital for protecting its offspring, which are limited, right? Makes sense. Humans, however, our interoceptive cortex, the part that senses our internal body state, it's hugely enlarged. And that makes us uniquely able to turn physical pain into this whole world of unhappy associations and emotions: dread, loss, anguish, anxiety, regret, suffering.
Ah, and that's exactly where that dupper human question comes in, isn't it? The why me? Like, a deer might get, okay, I fell, I'm hurt, can't get up. Simple cause and effect. But humans ask, why must I suffer? In this way that goes beyond just the physical. And it seems universal, right? Across cultures. For millennia, like that Babylonian nobleman in the poem of the righteous sufferer, felt totally abandoned by the gods, even though he'd been pious, asking why.
Exactly. And the science now is becoming increasingly clear. Chronic pain. It isn't just a symptom anymore. It's a disease in its own right. There's more and more evidence that untreated pain actually physically rewrites the central nervous system. It causes pathological changes in the brain and spinal cord, which tragically leads to even more pain. It could even damage parts of the brain involved in thinking, in cognition. Some studies show degeneration in areas like the prefrontal cortex.
Wow. And yet, one expert in the book noted 98% of doctors still say pain is a symptom, not a disease.
Right. But, as he clarifies, think about blindness caused by diabetes. Blindness is its own condition, even if triggered by diabetes. In the same way, pain can start as a secondary thing, a symptom. But over time, it becomes the primary problem. The warning system itself is broken. It is the dysfunction.
That really makes sense.
And this brings up phantom limb pain, which is just fascinating and awful. Patients feeling terrible pain from a limb that isn't even there. Historically, people thought, oh, I must be damaged nerve endings in the stump. But brain imaging now, it shows that it's mainly down to changes in the brain's own internal map of the body. That homunculus we mentioned, the brain's sensory map. When a body part is lost, neurons from nearby areas on that map can actually sort of invade its territory. Yeah, grow into that now silent area. So, for example, you stroke an amputee's face, because the face area is right next to the hand area on the map, it might trigger a sensation in their phantom hand.
That's kind of terrifying. It implies our pain system isn't fixed, like hardwired.
Exactly. It's soft-wired. Or plastic is the term scientists use.
Plastic.
Okay. Which sounds good, right? Adaptable. But the scary part is, it can be maladaptively molded by pain. It can learn to become more sensitive.
So it learns the wrong lesson.
Precisely. The whole process is called sensitization. If it's happening centrally, in the brain and spinal cord, it's central sensitization.
Yeah.
If it's more at the site of injury, peripheral sensitization.
So what does that look like for someone experiencing it?
Well, in conditions like allodynia, things that shouldn't hurt at all become excruciating, like a light touch, or the pressure of a sock feeling like, as the book puts it, hot iron shoes.
Oh my God.
And then there's hyperalgesia. That's where existing pain signals just get massively amplified. Basically, the phrase is, pain begets pain. The longer those pain pathways are firing, the more efficient they get at firing, which just means more pain. The volume knob gets stuck on loud.
Right, that sound system analogy. It's stuck on loud. Okay, so if chronic pain is its own disease, this malfunctioning system, how good are we at actually treating it?
Yeah, it's $1 million question.
Turns out, maybe not so great. Pain is like one of the main reasons people go to the doctor in America. Yet there are only about 2,500 board-certified pain specialists for it every 25,000 chronic pain patients. That ratio is terrible.
It's incredibly skewed.
And most regular doctors, they know relatively little about pain and maybe don't have the time or incentive to learn more.
And looking at the bigger picture, this lack of specialists, a lack of training, it means that by the time patients actually get to a dedicated pain clinic, it's often really late in the game. Prevention, tackling pain early and effectively, that should be key. But policies, insurance issues, just general lack of understanding, it all leads to delays, costly delays for the patient.
Right. Let's talk about meds for a second, even the over-the-counter stuff. Tylenol, right. Acetaminophen. Can cause liver toxicity if you take the maximum dose regularly. And NSAIs, that's like Alev, Advil, ibuprofen, long-term use, can cause stomach ulcers, even fatal gastrointestinal bleeding. The author herself had major stomach problems from NSAIs.
Yeah, they're not benign, especially long-term. And then you get to the really complex stuff. Opioids. They're often painted as these instantly addictive evils, right? But some studies, like the one cited, show a really low addiction rate, 0.19% for chronic non-cancer pain patients who don't have a prior history of addiction.
0.19%. That's much lower than you'd think from the headlines.
It is. But society and medicine is wrestling with this huge ethical question. Is it right to deny potentially helpful opioids to those patients because we're afraid of wider abuse, the opioid crisis? And doctors are caught in the middle. They face serious legal risks. The book mentions Dr. Ronald McIver got a 30-year sentence, even though he reported suspicious patient behavior, and his own patients testified that he had successfully managed their pain.
It's a minefield. And this difficult situation, it seems to feed into what the author calls the invisible hierarchy of feeling in pain treatment. It's pretty stark, actually. Things like your gender, your race, your class, they can still negatively affect the care you get. Men, apparently, are more likely to get opioids, surgery, more complete exams. Women with similar complaints often given antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds instead.
Yeah, the implication being it's in their head.
Right. And studies show minorities, especially Black patients, are up to 3 times more likely to get inadequate pain relief. Their requests are more often seen as drug-seeking behavior.
And this just carries forward horrible historical biases, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the Victorians genuinely believed upper-class white women were the most sensitive to pain, while enslaved people, or people they called savages, were thought to be somehow dulled to it. Some even talked about thicker skin, incredibly.
Wow.
But modern research often shows the opposite. African Americans, for instance, frequently report greater pain severity and can have lower pain tolerance. There might be physiological reasons for that, maybe related to stress responses, beta endorphin levels. It's complex.
So the old biases are just plain wrong, scientifically. And the whole doctor-patient dynamic itself is critical, too. Physicians can get overwhelmed by so-called difficult patients, which often means patients with chronic pain who, understandably, might develop depression or anxiety like 30 to 50% of them do.
Right, and those mental health challenges, tragically, can make the pain treatment itself less likely to succeed. It's a vicious cycle.
The author felt this herself. She described sometimes feeling like her husband and her doctor were ganging up on me, like they weren't really hearing her experience of the pain.
Which brings up such an important point. Doctors really need to try and understand the meaning the patient attaches to their pain. If you believe your pain means something terrible is constantly being damaged inside you, you're going to experience that pain as much worse, aren't you? Compared to someone who understands that, often with chronic pain, it's more like a false alarm. The alarm system itself is broken, not necessarily the thing it's alarming about.
That framing makes a huge difference. And the author's own medical story, it just highlights so many of these problems. Initial misdiagnosis, physical therapy that felt totally wrong for her body, then a cortisone shot in her shoulder that went wrong, caused a dural puncture, basically a leak in the spinal fluid lining, leading to the worst headache I've ever had or imagined.
Oh, awful.
Followed by this weird disinhibition from the steroids, where she became aggressively drunk after just a little alcohol.
Whoa.
And get this, she even got a second-degree burn during a pain study. Because she trusted the researcher so much, her brain apparently didn't register the heat as dangerous until it was too late.
That's incredible. It just shows how powerful the brain's interpretation is.
It really makes you wonder, yeah. If our brain's map can be that powerfully affected, what other sensations might we be sort of misinterpreting based on trust or belief? Okay, so if medications and traditional approaches have all these hurdles and complexities, what about the mind itself? This is where I think the deep dive gets really fascinating. The placebo effect.
Ah, yes, the placebo.
It's not just all in your head in a dismissive way. It's not faking it. Neuroimaging brain scans, they show that a placebo actually activates the brain's own pain control systems. It releases the brain's natural opioid-like chemicals in a way that looks, neurochemically, indistinguishable from taking an actual opioid drug.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it confirms ancient wisdom, really, like the Egyptian Ebers papyrus that said, magic is effective together with medicine. Medicine is effective together with magic. Magic and medicine.
Basically.
Even strong drugs, like opioids, work much, much better when the patient knows they're getting the real deal. Belief matters. And the flip side is also true. Negative expectation, the nocebo effect, can seriously ramp up pain. If you expect it to hurt more, it probably will.
Okay, so this begs the question, can we consciously control this, harness this power?
Well, studies definitely show that attention and expectation have a massive impact on pain perception. The more attention you pay to your pain, generally, the more pain you feel. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, intuitively.
Dread, anticipating pain, that definitely makes it worse. But distraction, especially if it's a matter of survival, that can dramatically reduce pain. Think about Bethany Hamilton, the surfer who lost her arm to a shark. She reported feeling almost no pain initially. Her brain was totally focused on paddling back to shore, on surviving.
Wow. The brain just shut the pain signal down.
Essentially, yeah, prioritize survival. But even beyond those extreme situations, just ordinary distraction works too, like doing a really demanding counting task, listening to music you enjoy, even pleasant smells that can all reduce perceived pain.
And hypnosis. The book mentions that as an extreme form of controlling attention.
Right. It can be so effective that some surgeries can actually be done without chemical anesthesia, just using hypnosis.
Seriously.
Yeah. And interestingly, people who are highly hypnotizable, they tend to have a larger anterior corpus callosum that's a part of the brain involved in attention and filtering information. They might just be naturally better at tuning out unwanted stuff, like pain signals.
This isn't just like ancient wisdom or weird fringe stuff anymore, is it?
Not at all. Researchers today are developing techniques that sound like pure science fiction. Neuroimaging therapy.
Okay, what's that?
Get this. Patients watch their own brain activity in real time on a screen. Maybe it's represented as, say, a 3D fire, and the height of the flame corresponds to their pain activity level. And by watching this feedback, they learn to consciously influence that activity, to literally control their own dials and turn on their brain's natural pain-modulating systems.
So you watch your brain to train your brain.
Exactly. The idea is to kind of jumpstart the sort of control that, might take Buddhist monks 30 years of meditation to achieve.
That's incredible.
And it ties right into cognitive reframing as well. That's where therapists teach patients to consciously change their internal story, their narrative about their pain, shifting from "I am sick" to "I am managing this, I'm getting well."
Like that patient who was told, don't let your mind focus on it when you feel an unpleasant sensation.
Right. It's not about denying the physical feeling exists. It's about redirecting your focus, maybe through exercise, through mental practice, transforming how you relate to it.
So how did the author Thernstrom do with all this herself after all her research understanding chronic pain as a disease?
Yeah, she intellectually knew it was a chronic disease. She knew reducing it to a manageable level should be seen as a win.
Right.
But she really struggled to actually catch a moment when she felt less pain and just enjoy it. She still always felt fundamentally in pain. She admitted her own pain-modulating system felt like this genie trapped in a bottle, just unresponsive when she tried to command it.
Even after knowing all the science?
Right. She tried lots of alternative things too, hypnosis, acupuncture. She found them relaxing, sure, but ultimately they didn't really touch her specific pain in a lasting way.
Great. So it highlights that even with all the science, all the potential of belief, the individual experience is still really complex and, well, individual.
Absolutely. And Dr. Tracy from Oxford, who's mentioned in the book, he's optimistic, though. He believes that maybe in 5 or 10 years, they'll be able to do a brain scan and tell someone quite precisely, okay, this percentage of your pain seems to be coming from the peripheral nerve signals, this percentage from dysfunction in your brain circuits, and maybe even this percentage from psychological tendencies like a habit of catastrophizing or being hypervigilant about sensations.
Wow, a personalized pain profile. That would be revolutionary. So we've covered a huge amount of ground here, journeyed through millennia of how we've thought about pain, from myths and curses to the incredibly intricate wiring of the brain. And we've explored this profound impact that our beliefs, our expectations have on our actual physical experience. What really comes through is that pain is so much more than just a sensation, isn't it? It's this deeply personal story, this narrative, shaped by our biology, yes, but also by history, culture, and our own minds.
Exactly. And if you step back and look at the big picture, it means that while we probably can't ever totally eliminate pain, our bodies need it to survive, fundamentally. The future of treating it, especially chronic pain, seems to lie not just in figuring out the physical nuts and bolts, but also in mastering that mindful part, as the author calls it, the part that shapes how we perceive the signals.
But the challenges are huge.
Oh, immense. As the book reminds us, the brain has 100 billion neurons that can form an unknown number of neural networks. understanding and influencing that. It's a massive undertaking.
Pain, then. It's like that quote, a poison from whose cup everyone has sipped. It really is a hallmark of being human, isn't it?
It is.
It can reshape us. Sometimes, yeah, for the worse. But maybe sometimes, if we can understand it, integrate it. Maybe in surprising ways, too.
Oh.
So for you, our listener, maybe here's a provocative thought to leave you with, something to mull over. If pain, this deeply physical experience, can literally rewire your brain based partly on belief and expectation, what other deeply ingrained beliefs, maybe ones you're not even fully aware of, might be unconsciously shaping your physical reality right now? And what could you potentially gain by consciously, intentionally trying to rewire those beliefs? That concludes our deep dive into the Pain Chronicles. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.